The proceeding will start shortly. 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 The proceeding will start shortly.
Order, order. Mr Martin Day to move the motion, please.
Thank you, Sir Roger. I beg to move that this House has considered e-petition 229004 relating to compulsory scanning for microchips of all cats collected by councils at roadsides, paths and all other locations they collect from that have been injured or deceased in RTAs. Dog owners have also supported the petition today because it has implications for all pets found deceased on council roads and paths. And the Gizmos Legacy petition reached its target because we are a nation of animal lovers. 49% of UK adults own a pet, with 11.1 million pet cats and 8.9 million pet dogs across the UK. And this debate is about the human suffering caused by the missing family pets. Pet owners suffer terribly when their cat or dog goes missing. Everyone will know someone whose cat or dog has disappeared, and the frantic searching that this creates. Everyone will have seen the desperate posters attached to lampposts, often offering rewards. Everyone will have seen photos in shop windows from cat owners pleading with everyone to check their sheds and garages for a beloved missing cat, or the social media posts on community pages. And I know I get a little anxious when my fellow goes out in the summer and doesn't come home at night. And he does that a few nights every year. So far, he has always eventually returned home. Pet owners never give up searching where there is any hope, and sadly, they often waste their time and their money chasing a lost cause because a council has no clear policy. Some councils are better than others in this area, but there is no consistency between councils, and I would say even variance within a council on some occasions. So this debate is about how a few simple procedures followed by council staff can halt years of searching and heartache where pet owners are living in hope for a miracle that will never happen. It is often the not knowing that hurts the most for these owners. If only missing pet owners could have a crystal ball to find out if their cat or dog is still alive and well or not. Well, we don't have crystal balls, but we do have microchips, and there's much more that could be done to make use of these. Gizmo's legacy petition was created by Helena Abrahams, who is with us today in the public gallery. She's a cat owner, cat sitter and volunteer who scans and has reunited hundreds of deceased cats every year with their owners. Not all pets are microchipped, so she photographs each pet she finds. It's a heartbreaking task, but Helena Abrahams knows that if she doesn't do this, then there's a risk that the pet will simply end up in a landfill tip with no chance for an owner to collect the body and have an opportunity to bury or to cremate. Yes, certainly.
Thank you very much. The Honourable Gentleman makes a compelling opening to what is a debate that I think will resonate well beyond here. And I just want to put on record my admiration for the determination and passion shown by Helena and her team of volunteers. And at the heart of this argument is about our compassion at the worst moment of a pet owner or a parent. These are family members for all intents and purposes. And what we're asking for is a standard, a consistent practice across the country, supported by law, that a government looking for a legacy could implement now, that ensures that in the event a cat is found having been involved in a traffic accident or killed some other form, is returned to his or her mum or dad through scanning. It's a simple process. Many local authorities are already picking these animals up, but they shouldn't end up in landfill. They should be placed back into the arms of their mum and dad. Otherwise, we risk, even at a time of austerity, having councils with all the parts but no heart. And what I expect is that from here, the attention and support shown by the 100,000+ signatures collected by my constituent Helena and her team, that sets a trend, that the expectation changes through law, and that we see quickly this practice ending and parents being reunited with their cats.
It's a good job Sir Nicholas Winterton isn't in the chair. I ought to explain to colleagues that Mr. Frith has very kindly and courteously indicated that he has to try and be in two places at once. I'm not normally quite as relaxed about interventions, but on this occasion, I think it was fair that he made the point. Mr. Day.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to the honourable member for the intervention he's made. He made some fantastic points. I agree entirely with him, and I join with him in that I cannot praise his constituent, Helena Abrahams, enough for the work that she's doing on this. It's absolutely fantastic. As part of sharing so many lost and found cats on social media, she has set up the first deceased cat group on Facebook, Deceased Cats UK and Ireland, after losing her beloved cat Gizmo, who was chipped but was not scanned and was disposed of in the most horrific of ways. It came to light through this group that so many cats throughout the UK were just being disposed of like trash without being scanned for a chip by councils. The general public were actually witnessing councils throwing cats in the back of refuge trucks and caged vans. She realised for the sake of her other cats and for all cats nationwide that she needed to take action, and hence she set up Gizmo's legacy petition, and within 6 months she had over 107,000 signatures. A tremendous effort of work. She joined forces with It's All About the Animals, Pet Theft Awareness, Stolen and Missing Pets Alliance, Animals Lost and Found in Kent, Vets Get Scanning, Harvey's Army, Dogs Lost and Cats Protection. All these organisations recognise that there is no unified procedure in place when dead pets are recovered under council jurisdictions. Gizmo's legacy has been campaigning since 2016. The founding members include Wendy Andrew, Angela Hoy, Beryl Beckwith, Jeff Sharp, June Jeffrey and Valerie Peachy. They have been raising awareness tirelessly about this issue and its devastating impact on owners and their families. The mental health implications of owners never having closure about what happened to their beloved pet cannot be underestimated. We already have scanning of dead pets on the motorway and strategic road network, a positive move following from the work of Harvey's Army, which secured Harvey's Law. Harvey, if you don't know, was a miniature poodle who went missing in November 2013. He was microchipped and wearing a collar and tag. His body was recovered just 21 minutes after he went missing. It was stored, then cremated. Yet no contact was ever made with his owners, who, along with friends, searched for 13 weeks before discovering what happened to him. Harvey's Army is a registered charity and has grown to over 300 volunteers across England, Scotland and Wales who are active in trying to identify and connect families with their lost pets. And following parliamentary debate in 2015, Government committed to requiring Highways England to scan all pets found, and if a microchip is found, have the owners informed. Similarly, Transport Scotland has been mandated to scan pets collected on its strategic road network. However, most cats are killed on minor roads, and it remains at the discretion of local authorities about what they choose to do. Gizmo's legacy calls for the same model to be implemented on council roads, paths and all locations that they collect from, giving the same empathy and respect for cats and dogs wherever they may be found. Some councils already have a procedure in place, but it varies from council to council, and the term best practice is often very loosely followed, often ignored and often reliant on animal-loving council staff with an understanding on how they would feel if it were their own pet that was found dead. Some councils, such as Leeds Council, do not even scan. Yes, certainly.
Congratulate the honourable member on securing this debate. Can I say that I am an owner of several cats. My first cat was killed before my eyes when I was aged about 6. And it jumped in front of a lorry. I knew what had happened to him. Subsequently, in the last 2 years, we've lost 3 cats. And the only way we could discover what had happened to those cats was by producing posters and the children in my family going from door to door, asking people in the area if they knew what had happened to the cats. And we discovered that each of the cats had been knocked down by cars. And the council in the area in which we live actually has a policy of reporting cats that are chipped to the owner when the cat is killed. In this occasion, the council did not report on any of the 3 occasions. So I congratulate those who are attempting to get a firm policy throughout the country and not depending on your postal code, because the loss of a cat is the same for members of the family as the loss, almost the loss of a human being.
I thank the honourable member for that wonderful personal example, which just highlights the problem. Exactly. Councils have policies, but they don't even follow their own. And the amount of distress that's caused with people having to search, go to their own lengths, incur expense, is really an inhumane way of treating our own citizens. Many of you will know that I have a cat called Porridge, who is very much part of my family in West Lothian, where I am delighted that the Council has recently reviewed its practice and is implementing a revised policy from July. This will ensure that pets killed on roads are collected, checked for identification chips and reported to Pet Search, who will then contact the owners. The Council will store pets in a freezer for up to 7 days and allow for notification and collection, with unclaimed pets then being cremated. I think that is a good example of best practice, and I'm glad that that's coming in. So there's a lot of similar practice we need to encourage around the country. So, I would like to tell you all an account from Helena Abrahams in her own words, so I will read them. I was asked to go and retrieve a deceased cat in Bolton. When I arrived, unfortunately, I witnessed the council cage van already attending. The council worker proceeded to throw the dead cat in the back with the rubbish, while laughing quite openly with the driver of the van. I was absolutely infuriated by what I witnessed, and was determined to somehow rescue the body of the cat from them. When I composed myself, I followed the van to where they were now emptying the street bins and approached the men, never mentioning what I had witnessed, but asking if they had collected a cat recently, as I believe I knew the owner. He proceeded to get the cat's body for me, and I quickly left the area and scanned it for a chip. He was not chipped, but I left him with a local vet and used his photos to locate his owner on Facebook. Bolton Council failed on more than one occasion and definitely don't scan. Again, that backs up the story we heard from the honourable member a few moments ago from her council. Again, this illustrates there is no set policy for council staff to follow. The cat's body could so easily have been placed into a separate bag and labelled up and then handed to a designated member of staff trained to use the simple scanner, another sign that not all councils are taking the collection of dead pets seriously. And bearing in mind that all councils have a requirement to scan for dogs, they all have the equipment. So there is absolutely no excuse for it not happening. Another message sent to Gizmo's legacy reveals more evidence that council staff were failing pet owners, and this incident happened to Wendy Andrew collecting from Oldham. A while back, I went to pick up a deceased cat that had been reported via our Facebook group, Deceased Cats UK and Ireland, on Shaw Road, Oldham. As I arrived at the location, I saw a small road sweeper driving up and down the road, and I parked my car and was looking for the cat. As the sweeper passed me, he made conversation and asked me, was I okay? I said, I'm looking for a deceased cat reported in this area. He then said, oh, the big road sweeper just came and swept it up. That's what we are told to do. He then said there would be nothing left of the cat now as the sweeper just sucks them up and annihilates them. I said, do you not pick them up and check them for chips? He said, no, they just go back to the depot and empty their loads onto the local tip. I did say that's disgraceful and that's someone's much-loved baby. He replied, that's what we are told to do. And all too often I think that is what many council refuge people are told to do. And from an operational point, I can understand it, but it's not humane and there are better practice that they could follow for very little extra effort. Again, we see a lack of council policy, and again we see a lack of respect, and again we see a lack of empathy. All of which results in an owner still searching, knocking on doors, spending money on unnecessary posters and leaflets, searching the internet for a cat that they will never find, perhaps a distressed family not being able to sleep at night with the worry that their cat is trapped, or has been stolen, or has been cruelly mistreated. We all know pet owners that never give up searching. The owner of this cat would surely rather know the truth. And I would just ask everyone to pause and think for a moment of how they would feel if they found out that their pet had been thrown in the back of a wagon and emptied into a landfill site like rubbish. To those who signed the petition, the idea of their family member becoming rubbish is simply abhorrent. A pet's body can't be brought back to life, but the body is the owner's property, and the owner deserves the right to choose what happens. Many councils are ignoring this. The Gizmos Legacy team have had several high-profile names and organisations supporting them or helping them achieve the target that has triggered this debate. And special thanks must go to Emmerdale actress Samantha Giles, BBC News, Look Northwest, Granada Reports, Eamon Holmes, Ruth Langford, and the Lost and Found groups on Facebook, Dr Daniel Allen, Richard Jordan, Debbie Matthews, Deborah Meaden, James Firth, Dermot O'Leary, Rachel Riley, Harriet Finch, Peter Egan, TV vet and campaigner Mark Abrahams, Dog Lost, the Stolen and Missing Pets Alliance, Cats Protection and Harvey's Army. These organisations and individuals, all recognising the importance of our pets in our lives and all sharing posts from the Gizmos Legacy Twitter and Facebook accounts calling for Gizmos Law. In addition, the team would also like to thank the many radio stations that did interviews and to all the newspapers who have published articles, and to all the public, of course, who work tirelessly distributing posters to help get the signatures. All these people are animal lovers and they understand that pets are valued companions to many folk, and their pet is more than a family member, but often their best friend. The way the country supported this petition was heartfelt, and it shows the passion people feel of the need for Gizmos Law. It's obvious the general public were unaware of the practice by many councils, but are grateful to have had it brought to their attention and have the opportunity to press government to amend it. Cats, as well as dogs, are part of the family. They are not a commodity to be disposed of on rubbish heaps. Losing your cat or dog to an RTA and never having the opportunity to say goodbye rips the heart out of families and wrecks lives. Why has your beloved pet chipped when they are just disregarded and thrown away as trash? It takes seconds to scan a microchip and to get the details and then inform the owner. And given that we encourage microchipping as best practice, we really need to follow up to make it worthwhile for people to do that. Yep, certainly.
Just to follow up on your honourable gentleman's point, this is about joining up policy. The policy is there. The legislation is actually there. There is evidence of good practice. It's about joining it up, because otherwise the policy is in isolation. What we've got to do is apply the empathy. And I think your point is well made. At the moment we ask those same people to envisage it being their pet or a member of their family, that by all intents and purposes our pet owners view them to be, then actually I think we can turn this around. And yes, underpinned by legislative change, it is about empathy. And otherwise our policy just feels in isolation, detached from people's experiences. And the idea that at the moment of a worst case scenario, I myself, when I met with Helena and her team, talked of an early morning drive home from holiday and seeing a dead cat on the road and feeling myself a sense of empathy. The idea that these animals end up not returned to their families, that's at the heart of this, isn't it?
Thank you. The honourable member makes a good point. It is about empathy, and what we're calling for is easily attainable within our current resources. I happily give way.
Member for giving way, and there's no question of the success of compulsory microchipping of dogs, but would the honourable member agree with me that basing the need for microchipping of cats on the risk these animals pose to the public just simply ignores the welfare of the animals in question?
I think the honourable member makes a very good point. That it isn't about safety to the public, it's about their family well-being and knowing what's happened to their beloved pet. Thank you. The whole process, of course, of scanning can be done in minutes. It is not a complex procedure. Often councils that have a policy in place to scan deceased pets leave the onus on the owner to contact the council within 7 days, which is quite a pointless exercise if an owner isn't notified or if the pet is disposed of without an owner being given the chance to collect the body, to bury it or cremate it and deal with the grief. And even during the holiday period, you may be on holiday for longer than a week. It's just unrealistic. There is too often disparity between council policy and actual practice, and we know this from various cases evidenced by witnesses and from council workers. One such worker, who wished to remain anonymous, told Gizmo's Legacy, "Oh, we don't scan them. We are told not to. We take them to the local tip, where they are thrown in a freezer until full and then put in the refuge." Des Kane is a volunteer chip scanner with Harvey's Army, and he regularly pops by his local council's office storage facility in Coatbridge in North Lanarkshire to check if there are any pets in the freezer that can be identified. He finds their approach to how pets found on the roads is very hit and miss, and to quote Des, he says, "I find the only real documenting of such unfortunate deceased pet is the label attached to the bag in which they are placed. This label states the following: animal type, colour, where and when picked up from, and any distinguishing markings. To my knowledge, that's as far as it goes with documentation, and I am not aware of any other efforts made by the council to find a potential owner, i.e. posting on their website or social media. They do have an animal welfare officer who they call to scan animals when they've been lifted, or they call me when he's not available. I found the council staff at the facility very accommodating and helpful, but I feel the council policy as it stands could be a bit more thorough in trying to contact a possible owner, although I know they are more proactive than some other authorities. Such volunteers do a tremendous job around the country in uniting people with their deceased pets, but it shouldn't be left to them or to the random lottery of what each council chooses to do. Cat owner Anita Short, a resident of Sunderland City Council, learned from a neighbour that her cat Toby had been collected by Cleansing Services. After the neighbour's information, she contacted the council and was invited to Sunderland Council's depot to see if Toby was in their freezer. Anita recognised the cat from his collar. She asked why her cat had not been scanned, and their excuse was they didn't have a scanner on them. So why do they state that they will scan animals and pick up? And bear in mind, as I've said earlier, they should all have scanners given the requirement for dogs. They weren't following their own policy, and Anita Short would never have known her cat had been collected and was in a council freezer if it was not for her neighbour. So relying on best practice is unfortunately fairly meaningless if the policies are not strictly followed, and this is why Gizmo's law needs to be implemented. DogLost.co.uk is the country's leading missing pets lost and found service, and yes, despite the name, they do also deal with cats. They have a national network of volunteers, and their service is free but relies on donations. You've probably seen their posters attached to lampposts or in shop windows with details of missing pets. Since the launch of Dog Lost UK in 2003, over 105,000 dogs and cats have been registered missing or stolen. Thankfully, nearly 3/4 of pets were found. And Dogs Lost inform us that in the year 2018, 9,029 pets were reported missing. At the start of this month, some 24,201 pets are still missing, and that means many families are still searching. How many of these dogs and cats have been recovered from council roads and paths, but were never scanned? How many of these dogs and cats have ended up in landfill because of lax record keeping, we will never know. Of course, not all animals are microchipped, so to be fair to some of the councils, it is not possible even where they do scan. What we do know is that 2 councils admitted to collecting the bodies of cats. They put them in the freezer but failed to scan or keep any records. On questioning, they admitted remembering the description of the 2 cats. This happened to Michelle Morton's cat Cookie in the hands of Blackpool Council and Jeanette Barton's cat Benji under Wigan Council. Both these cats were microchipped, but it would appear that neither of these councils bothered to scan. And this is because they don't have to. It's only best practice. They make their own policies and they don't even need to bother to stick to the rules that they have set themselves. It really isn't asking much to take a few minutes to scan for a chip, some records to be kept that can be easily accessed and contact to be made to let owners have the bad news and a chance to collect their pet for burial or cremation. Is that too much to ask? Jeanette told us that she still cries over losing Ernie, and I'll remind everyone in this room again, the emotional connection between humans and pets cannot be emphasised enough. So this debate is about the human suffering, not about the lost pet, although that's caused the human suffering. There are so many heartbreaking examples of families who have lost their pets, and Gizmo's legacy detailed a broad range of these in the pack that they sent for members. Examples which highlight the lack of scanning occurs all over the United Kingdom. The last such example I will give today is that of Wendy Turner and her cat Merlin, which was neutered and microchipped. After spending a day looking for him, she posted on Facebook, and following his last sighting discovered that he'd been taken by the council. After contacting the council, Wendy was told they'd be in touch after they had scanned the cat, but that didn't happen. Wendy was then given the runaround, being passed on to different departments and being told Merlin would be added to the list of deceased animals in a day or so. It was to be several weeks later before a vague description of a cat found in the area where Merlin was picked up appeared in the deceased animal list. And Wendy says, "It's 2 years since I lost Merlin, and even now I feel there is no closure. The thought of his precious remains being tossed away with rubbish or thrown into a furnace with no regard to him or his family, I find very hard to accept. I only wanted to bring my boy home. This was the reason why I invested in a microchip. If it was not for the reply to my Facebook post, I would still be searching for Merlin." And I think that makes a very strong point. People are spending real money to get their cats microchipped so that when something does go wrong, they can be reunited with them, whether that be alive or, unfortunately, deceased. So what can be done? Recommendations of good practice clearly aren't working for everyone. This suggests that legislation for the UK's 408 councils may be required. Of course, local authorities are devolved, so we may need legislation to be progressed in the devolved nations as well as in this Parliament. It takes minutes to scan a pet, log details and to contact an owner. A small price to pay when you think of the human misery that searching for a pet generates. It is important that contact is made where microchips exist and that a system where photos of deceased pets can be viewed by those searching is made available where no microchip is found. Our pets need improved protection. Gizmo's law would mean all councils would have to start scanning all animals they collect on all the roads and paths and locations and scan them for a chip and contact their owners to give them closure. If they are not chipped and send images through to organisations like Deceased Cats UK and Ireland or to Dog Lost, and they will happily share to trace the owners. Even to set up a council web pages or social media site. It's not too much to ask. Keep all cats and dogs for at least 7 days. If local authorities don't have freezers, they can use local vets. The petitioners are not asking for anything that is not easily attainable, and I am guessing that the attendance today that they have a broad cross-party of support. We need Gizmo's law to help protect the basic rights of pet owners, the right to have not to have a family member thrown into a landfill, the right to know if their pet has been found and identified, to be able to collect the body and to start the grieving process. Pets are part of the family, and it's unacceptable for councils to treat pets as throwaway rubbish. Now is the time to do away with the postcode lottery of random policies and often uncaring practices, which are described by DEFRA as best practice. Campaigners and pet owners all hope that the Minister will do the right thing and make Gizmo's law a reality. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
The question is that this House has considered petition 229004 relating to the identification of pets. Anybody like to speak? Looks fine.
Roger, and I'd like to thank the member for Linlithgow and East Falkirk for introducing this debate and for the way he explained the real pain that is involved when a cat goes missing and when you don't know what happens to that cat. Over 800 people across the 3 Plymouth constituencies signed Helena's petition, and it is really powerful that so many of them have also shared stories of their own missing animals to make the point of just how important it is that something which is a fairly simple legislative tweak could make such a powerful difference to those families involved. There's 320 people in the patch that I represent, and Sir Roger, it's clear that the British people are asking us to be more demanding for an animal welfare agenda and more consistent in its application about how it is used across the country. Last year, 230,000 cats were killed in road traffic accidents each year, and that's over 600 every day. And roughly since this debate started, we have seen probably 12 cats die in terms of the breakdown of the share of that. And that means each of those cats that have died is a family that won't be having their moggy come home. It will be young children asking where their cat is. It will be people worried about where their cat is. And we need to be creating a regulatory environment where, as much as possible, we value those animals and we value the relationship between those animals and those families. And I think that's not too much to ask about where we are at the moment, because every animal matters and every cat matters to the families that are involved here. And that's really important. As always, before I speak on these debates, I reached out to people on social media, and it should be no surprise that there are many people wanting to share their story of what happened to their lost cat, whether the cat came home, whether the cat was found, whether the cat is still missing in action somewhere, not knowing what's happened. And I remember when my own cat went missing, the fantastically named Bumble Snarf, after Bumblebees from Transformers and Snarf from Thundercats, obviously, went missing, and sadly was only found much later. And actually the worry about when you don't know where your cat is. And we all know that cats have a mind of their own, and they won't do as they're told. And so unlike dogs, they will do very much what they please. So sometimes they might just want to go out and have a play. But we also know that when they go missing, the heartache, the worry, the stress that comes from it is really important. And you know, Emma told me on social media that she's pleased that MPs are pushing for this debate. She talks about the cats that she has lost in road traffic accidents and the importance of microchipping, about how it works. Others have shared similar stories. The petition being debated today calls for councils to have the same respect for cats as they do for dogs. And I'm proud to say that Labour-run Plymouth City Council treats cats the same as dogs from road traffic accidents. And that's really important, because the postcode lottery that the honourable member who introduced the debate spoke about is something that we need to be engineering out of our system. But we also need to make sure that those councils have a consistent application of that, especially when there's multi-tiered councils or when there's a borough boundary, because as politicians we can recognise the borough boundaries, and some of us can recognise the boundaries between wards and even polling districts. But for the vast majority of people, they live in a community. I have to give away that point.
Just to emphasise that, of course, some of these boundaries can take place in the middle of a major road, which is exactly where an incident could occur.
I agree entirely with the point the honourable gentleman has raised, and that's why it's important that we have the similar application of the rules in every single council as we can. As we heard from my honourable friend from Cynnon Valley, there's no statutory obligation to scan microchip cats when they're found. However, I'm proud that Plymouth City Council follows the best practice that does that. They scan both cats and dogs found on roads, and if sadly the animal did not survive the accident, they're kept for a further 2 weeks, so that there's plenty of time for owners to be notified and for these pets to be returned to the owners for a proper goodbye. The laws are only just paper if they're not enforced, though. So we need to make sure that the regulatory framework is in place, that councils understand it, and that those people that work on the front line in our councils, sometimes who get a tough time, those that collect the bins, those that clean our streets, receive the training and the understanding about how important it is. Because as we're asking them to clean more streets quicker and faster because of the level of cuts, and collect more bins quicker and faster, pausing to collect a cat is something that adds extra work to their day. But I think it's important that they recognise, as we have spoken about in the debate so far, that the value of doing so, the empathy, the connection, that it could be their cat is so important. Happy giving way on that point.
May I just say to my honourable friend that Cardiff City Council, large city councils, the one I was referring to, also run by Labour, In theory, they report cat deaths, but in practice, they don't.
I thank the member for that point, and that's why it's really important that not only the regulatory framework tightens, but actually there's training and everyone that works on the front line in our public services, from local councils upwards, understand the value of enforcing that and giving proper care to those cats. Now, almost 1 in 5 households in Britain have a cat, making them the second most popular pets after a dog. Many people assume that if their pets are microchipped, it will mean that they'll be alerted if something were to happen. However, this is not always the case, as we've heard from the stories mentioned earlier, and it's something that we know from our own communities doesn't happen in every situation. Now, under the Road Traffic Act 1988, road users are required to stop and report an accident involving horses, cattle, mules, sheep, pigs, goats or dogs. And I think that list partly reflects a very, very different role of animals in society. And as the social contract for how animals are used is changed and is changing every day, and we see that in greater demands for protection of animals, we need to make sure that that list is also updated to reflect the views that we've got. Happy giving around that point.
I heard the Honourable Gentleman say that having your cat microchipped is no guarantee that if something happens to your cat that it will be scanned. Does he not agree with me then to make any policy coherent? It's not just enough to ask people to microchip. You have to legally compel them the way we do with dogs, and then local authorities will step up to that policy, fulfil their duties, so that when something happens to your cat, it's scanned and you find out what happens to it.
I thank the honourable member for that point. One thing I've discovered since being elected 2 years ago is that the public really want animal welfare properly enforced, with proper rules, properly funded. And I think the point the honourable lady makes is well put in that respect. Despite being valued members of households, part of the family, cats are sadly not afforded the same duty of care as we do to cattle, horse, mules and dogs. The life of a cat should be worth no less than that of any other animal because of the emotional connection that that animal brings to the family and the important role within a household. This needs to be addressed because, unfortunately, road traffic accidents involving cats happen frequently. Cats, as we know, sometimes misjudge the distance and speed of oncoming vehicles and can be blinded by headlights at night. The current law requires people to stop and report if they run over a dog, and that actually helps save hundreds of dogs' lives every year, because so far we've spoken about what happens if an animal dies in terms of reporting. But actually, accidents involving dogs and other animals can actually help save the lives of that animal if the owners know that they're required to stop and report that animal, that they've been involved with an accident. And so it's not just what happens at the end of a life with an animal, it should be about how we prevent deaths, needless deaths along the way at the same time. Pet Plan have estimated that 1/4 of road accidents involving cats are fatal. That means there's a good chance that cats could survive in the other proportion if they get the urgent care that they need. But this can only happen if there's a requirement for road users to report accidents involving pets. Now, I'd like to see a greater tightening of the legislative proposals around compulsory microchipping of cats, but also the reporting where a cat has been injured or involved in an accident. While this is a debate on accidents involving pets, rather than their owners, I want to take a moment just to briefly talk about the importance of drivers and other road users recognising the role of animals in the communities. Now, I represent an urban area, but Plymouth is surrounded by beautiful countryside and many weird and varied country lanes. And sometimes the accidents that you can involve a cow coming over a very high fence. When we are living in fantastic rural areas involving lots of different animals. And the driving skills required to understand what anticipatory action to take is really important on country lanes, but it is too on major roads as well. And I think part of the debate we need to recognise here is the importance of teaching drivers and informing drivers, not just at their first driving test and in the theory test, but throughout their entire lives, about the importance of looking out and recognising not only pedestrians, but also animals on pavements and in other settings when driving. We need to make sure that, actually there is structures engineered on our roads to better protect animals as well and make our roads safer. And that is something that I hope won't be lost on the Minister as we go through. There should be a requirement, I believe, for councils across the UK to follow the best practice that we've heard from a number of councils so far on scanning cats involved in road traffic accidents. Families deserve to know what has happened to their pets if they go missing. We need more action from this government to tweak this piece, because I think, and I say to the Minister, who I know I work with on a number of different areas, that at this time, when the legislative agenda of the government is perhaps not as full as it might otherwise be, that I think there is real space for doing the things where there is genuine cross-party support, and protecting our animals is absolutely something that, regardless of what happens with Brexit, I know that nearly all my constituents would want us to be doing in this place today, and tweaking the rules around this, extending microchipping to cats and requiring a uniform approach from every single council, no matter which political party runs them, is something that I think would be well supported. Thank you, Sir Roger.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Sir Roger. First of all, can I thank and congratulate the honourable member for bringing forward and setting the scene so very well. Thank him for that. And also to the previous speaker for his, from the honourable member for Plymouth for setting the scene and giving his contribution as well. I'm well known as a dog lover. I never remember not having a dog as a pet from a very early age, and many years ago in Ballywalter. My wife has been a volunteer in Assisi for many years and often sees the effects of unwanted and abandoned pets. And it breaks her heart and probably brings a lump to her throat, and perhaps even to mine, when she tells me some of the stories. Whenever my wife has probably had cats nearly all of her life, I understand. Whenever I never had a cat until we married, the fact of the matter was my dogs and her cats came together like her and I came together. I suppose that was. I'm not sure if that was why we did so, but that's the way it happened. We've always required a love for cats, I suppose, as a result of that. And we live in a farm, so whenever our animals and pets pass away, we've always been able to bury them in the farm, and that's because we're able to do that. We own the land, we can do that. But that doesn't happen for everyone. But it's also, I believe, that when we're able to do for dogs and cats and bury them in the farm, that they can perhaps still roam the fields, even though on a different level of, not physically, but maybe just their afterlife, whatever that may be. Microchipping is an issue which has helped with the abandonment of animals at some scale, but certainly more needs to be done to ensure that those who keep animals are able to do so. I've heard of a few people saying that homing an animal is as difficult as adopting a child. Now, that's said tongue-in-cheek, let's be honest. But I'm glad it is something which means a decision to house a pet is measured and well thought out. Assisi, where my wife's a volunteer, does not allocate a pet, either dog or cat, to any home without first of all doing a home visit to make sure that that person is ready to give a home to a dog or a cat, is in the frame of mind to do that, and has, let's be honest, has a home that can give the pet the freedom that it needs as well. And also, let's be honest, I mean, a pet can, for many elderly people, be a companion. But if you get a Springer Spaniel, for instance, Sir Roger, a very energetic dog, it wouldn't be fair in someone who is disabled or elderly to have a Springer who would run them off their feet. So therefore, the allocation of a pet has to be done. My wife does some of those home visits, so she knows exactly why it's of the importance of that. There were 140 of my constituents from Strangford that signed this petition, which is the reason why we're here today to speak to it, and I want to speak to it for that purpose. But I'm confident that I'm representing many, many more who perhaps didn't sign the petition but agree with the sentiments of what it brings forward. When I say that this is an issue which so many people want to see addressed in the appropriate way. The fact is that whilst the current law says you do not need to report hitting an animal being hit by a car, the reality is that there is a family left heartbroken, not knowing what has happened to their beloved pet. I remember very in the business that I used to have many years ago, and I was out doing deliveries one day, and I remember coming up the Dare Road in Cumber, and a cat had been killed that morning, and the woman was standing on the side of the road in tears, and she asked me would I basically scoop it up and put it in the bag, which I was quite happy to do. The problem was, as I was doing that, the people thought I had run the cat down. And I obviously hadn't, but I was trying to do my good Samaritan and respond to that lady. But I understood how heartbroken that lady was. That was her pet, that was her cat, that was her love, and her companion as well. So we have to understand that. The petition is a simple solution. It is my belief that if an animal is found, that an effort should be made to find the family and allow them to deal with it. But to do this, we need to push for people to get their cat microchipped to ensure that if we bring in new regulations into place, it is worth it. So I'm glad that the Cats Protection League in Northern Ireland has a scheme which enables cats to be neutered for £5. There are many schemes across the whole of Northern Ireland, across the whole of the United Kingdom, that volunteer charitable groups that wish to do this. The offer is open to owners who are receiving state benefits, are on a low income, who are students or pensioners, and who live in Northern Ireland. And under the campaign, you can get your pet cat neutered for £5, and microchipping is also available at some participating veterinary practices. And this may occur at an additional £5 fee. It's a small fee. CC, the charity that my wife works for, also makes it a policy of neutering all cats. So there is control done in relation to it as well. And I think we can't ignore the good work that the charity groups do across the whole of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Those who do this obviously care for their animal and deserve a modicum of care and response from their council. And I've written to my local council, Ards and North Down Council, asking if they will take this position on in coordination with the effort being put forward by the Cats Protection Charity. To be fair to my council, which I served on the old Ardsborough Council for some 26 years, and came off it when I was elected to this place in 2010, the Ards and North Down Council, as it is now, when requested by the general public to call out and collect the dead dog or the cats, my council does that with no coercion as part of their commitment to local pet owners. And they do that not because there's a written rule for it, but because they want to be responsive to the general public. And I must say, I congratulate my council on being so responsive and community-based in relation to it. When I've looked at some of the heartbreaking posts on Facebook asking if you have seen this cat or that cat, I think I mean, we have 3 cats in our house and 1 dog. They all came from charities. The dog was a dog from I think it was from a bad relationship. It had been abused as a pup. It was quite nervous when it came to us, but it's now very, very confident and certainly sees the house as its house rather than anything else. The cats were also all strays or came from the charities as well. The names were, I listened to the name of the gentleman from Plymouth referred to his cat earlier on there. Our cats are called Nicholas. I'm not sure why Nicholas, it sounds very royal, but and the second one is Muffins and the third one is Podge. The 3 cats, totally different cats, different personalities. 2 of them would probably stay in the house all day. The other one would hunt all day. And living on a farm, I suppose we're able to I really do get quite annoyed perhaps when the cat brings home some of its trophies, so to speak. And my wife probably hates it more than anybody else. But that's the nature of cats. They hunt by and large, and we have something to do. But whenever you see those heartbreaking posts on Facebook, and I've seen a number of them asking if you've seen this cat, you see them in the local papers, you see them in the provincial papers, you see them in shop windows as well. Have you seen this cat or that cat? Children are so upset, and there's something that can be done. That is why I'm very happy to speak in this debate today, to add my voice along with others who have spoken and those who will speak after, to the 107,062 signatories of this petition, and ask for the Minister to begin the work that needs to begin to ensure that the calls of the petition are answered and that people know their loved ones have been respectfully put to rest and not lying in a dump somewhere. The Minister has always been responsive to any things that we've ever brought forward. Our discussions with him on a personal basis and others have indicated that he will probably give us the response we wish to have. I look forward to that. I support the calls as put forward through the petition and look forward to hearing how government intends to respond in a positive and definitive way to make it happen, and to let all of those 107,062 signatories of the petition know that this government, our government, works for them.
Liz McInnes.
Thank you, Sir Roger, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. and also a pleasure to follow the Honourable Member for Strangford. And strangely enough, I used to have a cat called Muffin as well. And Muffin, sadly, was knocked over at the age of 1 year old. And it was in the days before microchips, but because it happened in the street where we lived, the cat was handed to me, and we were able to bury her in the garden and plant a little tree on top and say goodbye to her. And I know how important it is to be able to do that, to know what's happened to your beloved pet. Muffin was followed by 2 ginger cats. I decided to get 2 cats after that, so that if one was knocked over, I'd still have one left. And those 2 lived to be 19 and 21, respectively. When they both shuffled off this mortal coil after a long and happy life, I decided that life was getting slightly complicated, and that it was a bit difficult to fit cats into a politician's lifestyle. And I do admire my colleagues who do still have pets. I would find it impossible living in 2 places at once, but deep down, I am a cat owner. I'm very fond of cats, and given the choice, I would have a cat as a pet, but at the moment it is totally incompatible with this lifestyle. But also, the other reason I wanted to speak in this debate is that this petition gathered the most support of anywhere in the country from my constituency of Hayward and Middleton, topping the table with 634 signatures. And I feel almost duty-bound to speak on behalf of those 634 constituents who cared enough to sign this petition. Now, the sad story of Gizmo happened in my neighbouring constituency of Bury North, and I fully support the aim of this petition, which honourable members have described as just a tweak in the law, and that really is all it is. The aim of the petition is simply that deceased or injured cats are required by law to be scanned in the same way as dogs are, and that efforts are made to track down their owners. The law, as it currently stands, does not require, despite cats being very popular pets, it does not require motorists to report running a cat over. Nor is it compulsory for cats to be microchipped, although many owners do this voluntarily. And currently, according to Cats Protection, 68% of domestic cats are microchipped. Now, obviously, those cat owners are doing that for a reason. And the hope is that if their cat goes missing, that somebody will scan that chip and their cat will be returned to them. My honourable friend, the member for Plymouth, Sutton and Devonport, has already referred to the Road Traffic Act 1988, which states that collisions causing death or injury to dogs, horses, cattle, pigs, goats, sheep, donkeys and mules must be reported to the police, but not cats. Although the government's guidelines at the moment state that there is no requirement to report a collision involving an animal smaller than a dog. And I do wonder what size of dog the government is referring to. That guideline does seem to be deliberately vague. But the point is that the law could easily be extended to include cats. Now, the natural consequence of this petition would be that compulsory microchipping is extended to cats, and that the law is changed so that motorists are required to report all accidents where an animal has been injured, as well as making it a duty for local authorities to scan deceased and injured cats for microchips. And I'm pleased to be able to say that my local authority, Labour-run Rochdale Borough Council, already has a policy in place to check deceased cats for microchips, and it makes every effort to identify pet owners. If the cat has a chip, a member of the environmental management team will contact the owner to break the sad news and arrange for the pet to be either collected or incinerated, sadly, by the council, whatever the owner decides to do. If the pet doesn't have a chip, then they are stored for up to 4 weeks in case they fit a description from concerned owners, with unclaimed pets being incinerated after 4 weeks. Now, this seems to me to be a sensible and humane response from my local authority, and one which all councils should be able to adopt. Handheld scanners are inexpensive and only take a few minutes to use, and the point has been well made that councils are already in possession of these scanners because of the laws around dogs. And it could save so much heartache if all councils adopted this practice, which would allow the pet to be buried or cremated with dignity, allowing their owners to say goodbye and have closure. The charity Cats Protection supports the compulsory microchipping of cats, which is one of their 2022 agenda priorities. Cats Protection say cats are not political, although I think certain cats, such as Larry the number 10 cat, might dispute this. Larry frequently comments on the political issues of the day via his Twitter feed, which I think may have just a hint of human assistance. And at the moment, Larry is extremely concerned that the next incumbent of number 10 doesn't have a cat allergy. And really, I wish that was all we had to worry about. Now, Cats Protection are seeking cross-party support for their 2022 agenda, where compulsory microchipping for owned cats would allow more pets to be reunited with their owners and would also allow for owners to be contacted if their cat is involved in a road traffic accident. Cats Protection also stress the importance of keeping microchip details up to date, for example, if the owner were to move house. Now, these proposals are also supported by the Labour Party's Animal Welfare Plan, which calls for mandatory microchipping for cats, as well as for motorists to report all accidents where an animal has been injured or killed. The natural consequence of this would be that all councils would have a policy in place to scan cats as well as dogs, a simple step which would save so much heartache. There are so many good reasons to bring about this change in the law, and there isn't one reason why we shouldn't, and it's clear that this has cross-party support. So let's just do it.
I'm sorry, Patricia Gibson.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Like everybody else who's contributed today, I am delighted to participate in this debate, and I wish to particularly express my thanks to the Petitions Committee and to my colleague, the Honourable Member for Linlithgow and East Falkirk, for his well-informed and comprehensive speech to kick off this debate. And like everybody else in this debate today, I am hugely fond of animals, and we can all appreciate the importance of family pets. And, Mr Chair, for fear of completely dividing public opinion right across the UK, I wish to confess on the record that I am a cat lover, and I have had pet cats in the past. I had a cat called Kitty, and I had a stray cat which my family took in at my behest, who we called Misty, because she had a misty past and we didn't know where she came from. But she was very keen to stay with us. And like the Honourable Member for Middleton and Haywood and Middleton, I also suffer from the lack of a cat at the moment, not having sufficient time to look after and care for them in the way that cats demand. And I should also declare an interest, Mr Chair, that I am the Vice-Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Cats, and a number of members in the Chamber today confessed to me that they did not know there was such a group, so you're all very welcome to come along. If, as the petition calls for, all cats are scanned for a microchip when they are lost or injured or killed, then, Mr Chair, for me it makes nothing but logical sense that all cats really ought to be required to be microchipped by law for this policy to have any real coherence at all. Family pets add so much value to our lives and help us to maintain better mental health, whatever our age, and they play a significant role in combating loneliness, especially, but not exclusively, for older people in particular as well. Everyone, I think, understands that the compulsory microchipping of dogs has been a very positive thing. It's been a good thing. So we need to ask ourselves, why not so for cats? As the Honourable Member for Plymouth, Sutton and Devonport told us, every animal, every cat matters. A cat's life is worth the same as any dog's life. And dogs, of course, are required to be microchipped, and for which drivers are required to report if they are involved in an accident with them. Now, whilst we should all make every effort in an ideal world to have our cats microchipped, because we know there are significant benefits to both cats and cat owners in doing so, the SNP government in Scotland has long recommended microchipping of cats as a best practice in its Code of Practice for Welfare of Cats. And we know that responsible owners want to do what is best for their cat's welfare. And it's important that cat owners are able to avail themselves of this option, because it's always better to encourage people to do something rather than to force them. If owners were all fully informed of the benefits of microchipping their cats, I'm sure the vast majority, much more than currently do so, would be keen to take that offer up. But we know that many cat owners often don't think about losing their cats. They don't think about their cat having an accident until it happens. So they may not prioritise microchipping, and by the time they do, it's too late. But if the law right across the UK required all cats to be microchipped, and councils, by necessity in that case, played their part, it would save a lot of distress to cat owners, cats themselves, and in the case of loss or injury, could actually save a cat's life. Now, I know that the Scottish Government and the UK Government have yet to be persuaded of the merits of compulsory microchipping for cats. I don't really understand why, but I understand that that is the case. We already have this for dogs. And because the UK Government and the Scottish Government haven't quite been persuaded of the case, then it's a case that those of us who believe this is a good idea need to continue to make in order to persuade these respective governments that this is indeed the right thing to do. Because I believe that compulsory microchipping for cats is the very, very much the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for cats, it's the right thing to do for cat owners, and it's the right thing to do from an animal welfare perspective from any angle you choose to look at it. If chipping is compulsory, then local authorities will of necessity scan all cats which are lost or killed or injured. And given that microchipping of dogs already takes place, this isn't, as we've heard, this is not such a great leap from current practice. And the Honourable Lady for Haywood and Middleton indicated that to us. Clearly, there will be cat owners who may not do so, who may not microchip their cat unless it is an absolute requirement. And in the end, animal welfare requires us to make this, I think, a legislative matter. I will indeed.
Member for giving way and wholeheartedly agree with her, and we want to work with her and colleagues to make sure that we can have this change in the law both across Scotland and the rest of the UK. And would you agree with me that if we can get that compulsory microchipping and scanning, then it would be beneficial if we actually had one centralised database for this data? So when we do have a cat or a dog that is found missing, that it's really easy to get the data from that database so you can reunite it with its owner, because at the moment it's far too complex, and I think the government really needs to look at having that one centralised database.
I think the Honourable Gentleman makes a very good point. A centralised database is important, particularly for cats rather than perhaps dogs, because cats, as we know, can often wander extremely far from home and may have wandered into a completely different part of the country. So a centralised database would actually make a lot of sense. And I will be, in terms of compulsory microchipping for cats, I will be pressing the Scottish Government on this matter. It is devolved to the Scottish Parliament, and I hope that MPs today representing constituencies in England will do the same with the UK Government, and indeed the Minister, who's sitting in the chamber listening carefully, I'm sure. The Honourable Member for Linlithgow and East Falkirk rightly pointed out that local authorities across the UK have a confused and patchy policy on scanning for microchips. And it's clear the reason for such patchy and inconsistent practices across local authorities is because there is no compulsory microchipping. If we sort that out and local authorities will do their duty and follow the law if it's changed, it will be able to reconcile thousands of lost, killed and injured cats with their grateful owners. Now, I'm not a particularly prolific user of social media. I tend to post whatever it is I want to post and then log off. However, almost every time I do log on to social media, like the Honourable Member for Strangford, I see postings from worried pet owners I have to say, overwhelmingly cat owners who are desperately worried about their family pet who's wandered off and seems to be lost, or worse. Now, having been a pet owner myself, I completely understand, as I'm sure everyone in the room does, how worrying it is when your beloved pet cat doesn't come home and you don't know if it's lost, you don't know if it's in distress, you don't know if it's maybe trapped somewhere and can't get back home, or perhaps if it's even met with some terrible accident. And, Mr Chair, as you'll appreciate, the not knowing in itself is extremely distressing. You don't know if you'll ever see your beloved pet again. And we've heard that it cannot be underestimated just how much of a part of the family our pets become. So this is really a really distressing experience for any pet owner to go through. And if your cat does seem to be lost, if it is microchipped, and microchipping is enshrined by law, then when it is found, it is extremely likely that it will be returned to you, as your details will be contained in the microchip, which will be scanned by the local authority. And you're much more likely to be reunited with your cat. I honestly can't see any downside to that idea. Compulsory microchipping and local authority scanning microchips are inherently intertwined. The patchy and inconsistent scanning we've heard about today cannot continue in all good conscience. And we've heard from the UK Government and we've heard from the Scottish Government that it is best practice to microchip a cat. If that is the case, then it must be better practice by definition for all cats to be microchipped, and by law if necessary. And it must be even better practice again for local authorities to fulfil what would become a legal duty to scan cats which are lost, injured or killed, so that owners can be informed. And I've heard some people arguing that this isn't necessary because you can put a collar on a cat with the owner's contact details, works just as well. But although that is better than nothing, it's not quite as secure a safeguard as a microchip, because we know that collars can become loose, they can become untangled, and they can be lost. So there are no such worries with a microchip. Indeed, Battersea Dog and Cats Home is unequivocal in its view that microchipping is absolutely the most effective way of ensuring that a cat can be safely reunited with its owner quickly, together with its medical and domestic history. In 2018, Battersea was able to reunite 333 lost cats with their owners because they were microchipped. And we can increase that number with compulsory microchipping, which will of necessity mean compulsory scanning by local authorities. Under current laws, we've heard that drivers are required to stop and report incidents of hitting a horse, cattle, an ass, a mule, a sheep, a pig, a goat or a dog, but not a cat. This seems to me a very odd omission, and it must be addressed. I know of several people who have found their poor dead cats at the side of roads after being hit by a vehicle as they tried to cross the road. This is deeply distressing and makes the loss of a beloved pet all the more difficult to come to terms with. It's like the poor cat, who's like a member of their own family, was discarded in a way to suggest that it simply didn't matter. For all of us who consider ourselves animal lovers, this cannot be right. And research shows that over 60% of people in the UK believe the law should be changed, and that drivers who knock down a cat should have to report that as well. Why should cats continue to be excluded? Now, we know when you hit a dog with your car and fail to report it to the police, you can be fined up to £5,000. But the fact that you're under no obligation to report it when you hit a cat is deeply unfair. Now, we understand that this is all about dogs being more likely to inflict damage. There's insurance to consider and liability, and dogs are supposed to be on leads near a highway and perhaps their owners have been negligent, etc. But despite that, the current situation continues being deeply unfair and is distressing to both cats and their cat owners, as the Honourable Member for Strangford and others have indicated. Every year, countless cats are left to die alone, sometimes very slowly and in pain, before being dumped in landfill, when they could perhaps have been saved with treatment, or their grieving owners could have been given the opportunity to say a proper goodbye. If you knock down a dog or even an ass, you cannot flee the scene without reporting it to the police. Cats must not be seen as less worthy or less important to their owners. And if it was illegal for a driver to fail to report the knocking down of a cat, A compulsory microchip in your cat would mean that you would be notified in the appropriate way by the local authority, instead of being left for years, perhaps, wondering what happened to your beloved family pet. Now, many local councils may say or may argue they don't have the resources to purchase scanning machines for microchipped cats. Well, I would at this juncture like to pay tribute to Cats Protection, which I know for some time has been working with local authorities across the UK, donating scanning machines to some local authorities which struggle to afford or prioritise providing these machines. As a result, a number of local authorities have indeed been able to commit to adhering to a scanning policy as a direct result of these efforts. And this is important, since it is believed that of the approximately 11 million pet cats in the UK, over 230,000 die each year on our roads. However, cat charities like Cats Matter actually believe this figure could be much higher due to underreporting. But for fear of banging on, Mr Chair, if the law were changed to compulsory microchipping, local authorities would indeed prioritise the purchasing of these scanning machines as a priority to comply with the law. But at this juncture, I would also like to particularly pay tribute to Cats Protection North Ayrshire, which does sterling work with some really dedicated volunteers and whom I met shortly after I was first elected and had the good fortune and the pleasure of meeting Fonzie the cat, with whom I was quite taken. We have heard voices around this chamber calling for cats to be microchipped and for improvements in scanning procedures in the event of misadventure, so they can be returned to their owners. However, it also follows for me that all cats ought to be microchipped for the very same reason. Where we cannot persuade, and we haven't persuaded everybody, where we cannot persuade, sadly, it means we need to compel owners. It is the right thing to do. I absolutely support this petition and would go further, as I've set out. We need a coherent, joined-up policy, and I urge the Minister to consider compulsory microchipping, which will also deliver local authority routine scanning of cats who are lost or injured. And make no mistake, I will pursue the Scottish Government with this matter. And I commend the Minister also to set about correcting this matter for the cats in England, similarly as I will seek to address it for the cats in Scotland.
Dr David Drew.
Thank you, Sir Roger, and delighted to serve under your chairmanship. I know if you weren't there, you'd be over here, actually making a contribution to this debate. So, unfortunately, you have to sit there and stay mum, but hopefully we've done enough to make you feel that the representations have been fully covered. Now, we've had really very good coverage on this particular issue. Excellent speeches by my honourable friend for Plymouth Southern and Devonport, for Haywood and Middleton, and a number of interventions from my side, honourable members for Bury North. Cunham Valley, I would expect nothing else as a fellow cat lover, and elsewhere contributions from the honourable member for Strangford, who is an expert on this as much as he is on everything else, and other interventions from Aberdeen South. But I'd like to thank the honourable gentleman for introducing the debate, the honourable member for Linlithgow and East Falkirk. I think he covered nearly all the issues, and what he didn't cover is honourable friend, the honourable lady for Arran, for North Ayrshire and Arran, really, I thought, in a most comprehensive way. So I'm left with the unenviable task of having nothing to say, because it's all been said, but I just want to give some personal witness to this, but also make an offer to the Minister. So I'll start with the offer. The offer is, as has been said, that this is a very small amendment to the Road Traffic Act, as far as I can understand. And I do thank Battersea and Blue Cross and Cats Protection for giving us very full briefings on this. I mean, according to Cats Protection, it's section 170, paragraph 8 of the 1988 Road Traffic Act, and we're just merely asking for the insertion of cat into the current list. Now, as the opposition, I make the offer to say to the government, we'll help you do this. We will in no way play any politics. We'll just get this particular amendment, this particular addition into place. Now, I don't know whether it could be done by statutory instrument. If it can, that would be really good, but we're willing to work with the government on this because this is a very minor thing, but a very important thing. That's why we're here today in terms of the petition, which has been signed by over 100,000 people, and which is, for those people who have been through this experience, it's a very emotional thing. And personal witness, I've had 3 cats knocked down. Wolfie, Tiggy and Darcy. The first and the third I had to go and find myself. The second was found and taken to the local vets, and because obviously all my cats are microchipped, we were able to bury, and the Tiggy was incinerated, so we were able to bury in the garden the ashes. It's a very emotional thing. I mean, at any one moment in time, I have 5 cats using my cat flats. I think there are many more, because we're very generous with the amount of food we put out. Because I'm a cat lover. I am, to declare an interest, secretary of the all-party group on cats. I'm good to see my fellow member here. This is not necessarily one of those groups that is very political, but in this respect, this is a quite political issue, because we're asking the government to change legislation. And we're asking the government to change legislation in a very limited way, but which could hopefully, if nothing else, mean that people who have had their animal knocked over have either, in the terms of a fatality, they are able to say goodbye to that animal, but certainly if the animal is injured, then hopefully we can do something to help save that animal's life. Now, I will go on to my hobby horse, but not for long, which is that when someone knocks an animal over, accidents happen, but most are preventable accidents. It's purely bad driving. People are driving far too fast, and therefore they are responsible. And my view of driving has always been that it is a privilege rather than a right. Now, this is nothing to do with cats, but it is pertinent to this issue. I have, as part of my constituency, a number of commons. And every year, the cows and the horses are put on those commons. I mean, the minister will know the reason for that is that's the only way you keep the grass down and maintain the quality of the biodiversity on very important commons. And every year, 10 to 12 cattle or horses are knocked down. Now, if you hit one of those animals, for a start, it doesn't do a lot of good to your vehicle, let alone you. But if you hit one of those animals, it is because you've been driving too fast. The other day, at dusk, I was going at about 15 to 20 miles an hour because it was really difficult to see. 2 idiots went past me at least 40, if not 50. They wouldn't have a chance of avoiding a cow or a horse. And you think, well, what planet are these people on? Sadly, the people who own those animals have to then deal with the carcass, because it's usually dead, or do even worse, when it's dying, and then you have to get a vet in to painlessly, euthanize the animal. I don't understand why people don't see it is their responsibility if they knock any animal. I mean, I widen this to wild animals, the number of badgers and foxes and so on that get killed. If you hit an animal, then not only is it dangerous to that animal, but it's often dangerous to yourself. I mean, a lot of road accidents are caused by people driving at far too fast, where they then hit something. But we're talking here about cats. These are, on most occasions, somebody's pet. And they're really important to that person. So I don't understand how anyone who hit it, and you know when you've hit something. I'm sorry, the idea that, I didn't realise I hit it, that is not something that really is explicable. So you should always stop and think, well, maybe they did run out. Maybe I had no chance and I hit them, and I have to, therefore, at least do something about it. Now, that would be the case. It's a criminal offence, isn't it? If you hit a dog and don't report it, then you can, if the number is taken, you can be dealt with that. you know, that is something that we've put into law. So I'm asking the Minister with the best intentions, can we just include cats? I mean, cats are, next to dogs, probably the second most popular, and there are many feral cats that probably increase the numbers that much more dramatically, which is why I'm in favour of neutering and always done things in the past to encourage those campaigns. And certainly Cats Protection will always neuter cats if people can bring them along, usually for free. And certainly that's why I believe microchipping, I support what the Honourable lady says, that microchipping should be compulsory, because we want to control cat numbers, because that's right and appropriate, but we also want to recognise that people who have a pet have a responsibility, but also others who maybe through a genuine accident knock one of those animals over, then they have to report it, and they have to make sure that the person who has undergone that loss is at least able to know what's happened to the animal. The worst thing possible is if you don't know. If your animal has gone missing and you don't know for days and sometimes weeks what has happened. And we've got some very good cases here where animals have been lost for 10 years or more and suddenly returned. Now, there are very strange circumstances why that's the case. So I'm, in good faith, asking the Minister if we could just make this change. It may not be easy, but I hope it could be done through secondary legislation, and we will genuinely, if it's put on the agenda, we will support it. I make that commitment. There won't be any funny games of us trying to suddenly say we're going to include other animals. Let's keep it to cats. That's what the petition's about. That's what people want us to do. So I hope that the Minister will say some good things. I mean, I know at the moment the government hasn't said it's committed to this, and it's neither committed to microchipping, which I think it should be, because of the reasons I've said, neither is it committed to dealing with the inclusion into the list of animals, if knocked over, that should be reportable. It's not much to ask, and most people are horrified if they knock an animal over. Sadly, there are those who seem to be rather indifferent, but they shouldn't be driving anyway, in my opinion, because they're a danger, because it could be a child, because that is the repercussion. And we know how dangerous some people drive, and I'm always mystified how few people are banned at any one time, given how many people, when I cycle around, seem to drive incredibly badly and seem to be indifferent. So we have to deal with that. That's an issue, but this is very narrow. We're talking about cats. If you knock a cat over, you should have to report it, and you should deal with it, because that's the right and humane thing to do.
Minister.
Sir Roger, I know you have a real and sincere interest in this particular subject, so it must be incredibly difficult for you sitting in the chair, carrying out the role that you do. But we know you're with us in spirit and want to see improvements in this particular area. I think it's been a really important and fascinating debate. I've learned more about members' names of cats than I ever thought I needed to. But we've heard of Muffin and Misty, Porridge. But I think the one that takes the biscuit, and definitely the Creativity Award, was Bumble Snuff, I think it is. So it's good to hear that we've got a good posse of cat lovers here amongst us today. And it's true that we know that cats are cherished members of our families, and they bring joy and happiness to homes up and down the country. So I understand the distress that's caused when they become lost or injured or get hit by a vehicle. And we've heard some very harrowing stories today about the sense of loss and the sense of closure from the Honourable Member from Linlithgow and East Falkirk, who gave a fantastic speech to open up this debate. Indeed, the Honourable Member for Strangford, the omnipresent, I should say, Member for Strangford, talked about how sad it is to see lost cat posters around and families trying to find their lost ones. And my honourable friend, the member for Aberdeen South, talked about the need to take care of the needs of families, not just the animals too. And I'd like to thank the Petitions Committee for giving us the opportunity today to discuss the important subject of cat welfare and specifically the scanning of cats killed in road accidents. And as I said, I thought the Honourable Member did an excellent job opening this debate. But I'd like to also take the opportunity to thank Cats Protection, the RSPCA, Battersea Dogs and Cats Homes, Blue Cross and scores of other organisations that provide care for cats in all circumstances. And these organisations, with the help of dedicated volunteers, do everything they can to reunite and home cats in need. I commend the petitioners, Helena Abrahams and those others who've been so involved with this petition, as set out by the Honourable Member for Bury North in his early interventions, or should I say contributions, to this debate, which drew attention to the importance of scanning cats and through that the importance of cats being microchipped. And like many members of the House, I'm sure I was particularly taken with the examples from the Gizmo's legacy team with the terrible accounts of cats that have been killed in road accidents or lost through one reason or another. The Honourable Member for Haywood and Middleton talked about the strong support in her constituency for this particular petition. And, of course, North Manchester is not far away from Macclesfield, where I live. In many cases, owners have been unable to discover the fate of their lost pet, and I understand that this serves to compound their distress. I agree that local councils and their contractors do everything they can to identify the dead pets that they've come across and, where possible, to notify their owners so that they are not left in a sorry state of suspense or worse. Sir Roger, the issues raised in this petition on cats and road vehicles have been the subject of several recent debates in this House, not least the debate in December brought by my honourable friend, the member for Gillingham and Rainham, whose work championing the cause of cats I wholeheartedly commend. He was also able to raise the issues at Defer Oral's questions on the 28th of March, when the Secretary of State, who is a cat owner himself, said very clearly in relation to the private members' bill that we just talked about, bring it on. Some people might want to call this making policy on the poor. But I can say that I agree with him, because we need to do all that we can to improve cat welfare. The benefits of microchipping are well known, and that's why I'm planning for a call of evidence, when I can, in relation to making cat microchipping compulsory. This will be an important step forward for much-loved cats across the country, and I hope that honourable members here, not least of which the petitioners, member for North Ayrshire and Arran, that beautiful constituency, who made a compelling speech, indeed the honourable member for Plymouth South, Devonport, Haywood and Middleton, and the ever-present member for Stroud will recognise that this is an important step that we need to take. Over 107,000 people have signed the petition, and it's a reminder of just how well loved our pets are in this country and of how important their welfare is to us. So today, I'm pleased to explain the Government's response to key aspects raised by the petition in more detail. While the petition itself does not specifically call for compulsory microchipping of cats, in common with many animal welfare charities, we recognise that microchipping is the key method of identifying a pet and linking it to its owner. On that basis, the Government recommends that any owner should microchip their cat to increase the chance of it being reunited if it gets lost. This is also strongly advocated by Cats Protection and other welfare organisations. In April 2018, we updated the statutory code the statutory cat welfare code with the welcome collaboration of Cats Protection and others. The code now emphasises the benefits of microchipping cats specifically, and I encourage cats owners everywhere to consider the benefits of microchipping, which can be obtained for a very modest fee. In fact, microchipping can even be obtained free of charge. For example, Blue Cross provide microchipping services at their animal rehoming centres, hospitals and clinics, and other welfare charities do likewise. And indeed, the Honourable Member for Strangford, who often contributes on animal welfare debates, talked about a CC's animal sanctuary in Northern Ireland where microchipping is provided free in certain circumstances. That's a really important step. Microchipping technology has greatly improved the chances that lost pets will be reunited with their owners for a relatively small one-off cost of around £25, or as I've mentioned, in some cases free of charge. You can have confidence that your beloved pet could be identified if it were lost. As the head of Cattery at Battersea Dogs and Cats Home, Lindsay Quinlan, has said, whilst the microchipping procedure is short and simple, the return on their value is immeasurable. That's why the Government Statutory Cat Welfare Code promotes microchipping on two grounds. First, microchipping gives cats the best chance of being identified when lost. And secondly, and just as importantly, a lost cat that has a microchip is more likely to receive prompt veterinary treatment. In this way, microchipping ensures that cats are protected from pain, suffering, injury and disease as required by the Animal Welfare Act 2006. I'm grateful to Cats Protection for their support in developing the Cat Welfare Code. DEFRA officials remain engaged and are seeking additional opportunities to promote the benefits of cats microchipping. And I want to work closely with Cats Protection on this. And that's why I met with them in January to explore how the government can support this important issue. By working with Cats Protection and the wider sector through the canine and feline sector group, the government will further strengthen and protect the welfare of cats in this country. It's because of success stories that we've heard today that I'm so delighted that the proportion of cats that are microchipped has grown in recent years. Most recently, according to the People's Dispensary for Sick Animals, PDSA, 68% of cats are microchipped, up from 46% in 2011. However, a saddening statistic from a recent survey by Cats Protection suggests that the majority of cats taken to their adoption centres in the last 3 years were not microchipped. Compulsory dog microchipping was introduced in England through secondary legislation in 2016 due to the public safety risk posed by stray dogs, as well as the propensity for dogs to stray or get lost. Compulsory microchipping for dogs has been a real success, with a recognised reduction in stray and lost pets as a result, as the Dogs Trust annual stray dog survey can attest. This does not mean that cat welfare is any less important than dog welfare. And as I mentioned earlier, I am planning to issue a call for evidence on compulsory cat microchipping as soon as possible and to encourage its uptake even further. Turning to the key aspect of the petition, the issue of compulsory scanning, I recognise how painful it is to lose a pet and not to know what's happened. Under the Traffic Act 1988, there is a requirement for drivers to stop and report accidents involving certain working animals, as been discussed in the debate already, including cattle, horses and dogs. As I understand it, adding cats would require primary legislation, and that would be a primary responsibility for DFT, which is the lead department. However, the Highway Code requires drivers to report accidents involving any animal to the police. This can help many owners to be notified if their cats are killed on roads. The Blue Cross briefing for this debate clarifies the case for cats well. Dogs are required by law to be kept under control, i.e. on a lead. Therefore, RTAs involving dogs can be investigated by the police to determine whether the owner has broken the law. As cats are legally allowed to roam freely, the owner is not committing an offence. So there are additional responsibilities for a dog owner. Legally speaking, dogs are also considered more likely to cause damage to a vehicle, requiring the driver to report the details to the police to establish liability. There are differences between cats and dogs and their behaviours. Nevertheless, I'm pleased that it's established good practice for local authorities to scan any dog or cat found on the streets so that the owner can be informed. And this is often included as a requirement in street cleaning contracts, which it should be. But I realise from the information provided by the petitioners and champions of Gizmo's legacy that some councils may not be following this established good practice. I'll take this up with my honourable friend, the Minister for Local Government, to agree how we can encourage local authorities to work together further to promote best practice in this area and for dead cats to be scanned so that their owners can be informed of their tragic loss. I'll also write to the Local Government Association to set out my concerns and to seek assurances for increased adherence to the guidance. Cats Protection briefing through FIR requests show that 80% of respondent councils in England scan road traffic accidents for a microchip. But from the debate that we've had today, I think it's important that we have a more consistent appreciation and approach given to this. And the Honourable Member for Cynon Valley, Kynon Valley, Coon Valley, I'll get it. Hansard will correct it. I always get that one wrong. But what I don't get wrong is her absolute commitment to cat welfare and animal welfare more generally. So I hope she realises we want to take action in this area and move things further forward. In terms of the national road network, Highways England has clear guidelines for contractors to follow when they find a deceased cat or dog. This process is designed with owners in mind, giving them the best chance of being informed of the incident that has occurred. So, Roger, the process is laid out in the Network Management Manual, and I'm delighted to say that in 2015, the necessary arrangements were made in all Highways England's contracts to collect and identify cats and dogs killed on the strategic road network and to contact their owners. This included retrofitting the Network Management Manual, where both cat and dog fatalities are collected and identified where possible. This area is the responsibility of the Department of Transport, and following today's debate, I will work with my honourable friend, the Minister of State for Transport, to explore what more the government will do to ensure that guidance is being followed and what more can be done to help owners know the fate of their beloved cats. And I think the Honourable Member for Stroud makes a really important point. There's a huge responsibility on all of us and the public more widely who drive cars to consider their speed, not just for the danger that can cause to other humans, but also to animals as well, a point that's incredibly well made. It was also raised in the debate about whether there should be a centralised database. And Sir Roger, we already have a broadly unified microchipping system in the UK, and there are 12 databases that meet the requirements of separate regulations in England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. So we already have a working system that operates together and in a way talks to each other. So we can explore that more, but I just wanted to reassure colleagues in this debate that there are databases that serve the function we're concerned about today. So, Roger, I think we will all be agreed that we have had a truly interesting debate. There's clearly considerable sadness when a family pet is killed, and I understand that owners simply want to know what's happened, so they are not haunted by the possibility that a missing pet might one day return. So I think that it's right that we do all we can to encourage local authorities and others to scan their fallen pets they find, and I will work with colleagues across government to see what more can be done to promote and encourage good practice in this area. I'll give way.
I think, let's just ask this question, can this be done by secondary legislation, or has it got to be a change to the bill itself as now an act?
I've made inquiries on the basis of the points that he made and others in the debate, and it would be through primary legislation. This is the point about adding cats into that particular act. But the other area that's been highlighted here is compulsory microchipping, and as I've said in this debate, I'm taking the first steps forward on that particular area with a call for evidence. And so I hope honourable members, despite their concerns about the area more briefly, will see that we are committed to taking action here. And I personally think that will be a hugely important step forward, showing what our intentions are, and that will send a clear signal to local authorities that more needs to be done. And I'm sure, not least of which in Scotland, if I was in the Scottish Government, I would be trembling in my boots, waiting for the intervention from the honourable member to take further action there. But we will take these actions forward, as I discussed. So, Roger, the record of the government on animal welfare is strong and will continue in that vein. We have a very strong commitment to bring forward increased maximum penalties for animal cruelty. I'm working at the highest levels to move that further forward and look closely at regulation on animal rescue and rehoming centres. And I would also recognise, as always in the debates we've had over recent months, the degree of cross-party support for the action that's being taken here. And I know that it's because of that that we're able to take much of this legislation forward. And I think, as the Honourable Member for Stroud would agree, there is more to do. We already have brought forward stronger animal welfare controls and dog breeding and the sale of pets, including the breeding and commercial sales of cats, and the implementation of Lucy's Law, which bans third-party sale of puppies and kittens, following hot on the heels of the government support on Finn's Law, which protects service animals. This government is committed to protecting and enhancing the welfare of animals, and indeed cats, and will continue to build on our progress in the coming months and years, hopefully on a cross-party basis, like we've seen in recent months. Thank you.
Martin Day to wind up debate.
Thank you very much, Sir Roger. It's been a pleasure to take part in today's debate. We've had a broad range of speakers from across the House, all showing a very consensual approach. And I think that's a very important point to emphasise. The request from the petitioners is for basically a very simple legislative change to be made, moving good practice on scanning into law. And it's something that would be readily achievable. And while I welcome very much the comments that the Minister made and the commitment to move forward on microchipping, I hope he can make progress with the Minister for Local Government on the scanning issue as well. And that is something that I will be supporting my colleague from Ayrshire North and Aaron in pushing for Scotland to do as well. There's a lot of positive work there. Much has been mentioned about microchipping, and we've heard from a number of organisations before today's debate that cats being presented for rehoming ranging between 61 and 80% of them not having been chipped, and many others having chip details out of date. So there's a lot of work we need to do, and I think the Minister's comments will help us move forward in that direction as well. So I'm very grateful for that, and it really needs to be done. I had a look at the Dog Lost site, and I saw a cat that was a spitting image of mine, obviously a completely different area. So it would be easy to mistake a cat, but the chipping removes that uncertainty. And as we also heard, and I think Blue Cross gave us a very positive case, so I've spoken about a lot of death today, so I'd like to end with a very positive note. And they mentioned Harry the cat, who was reunited with his family after being missing for 10 years because he had a microchip. So it really does show that it pays to get that. Thank you very much.
Here, here.
The question is that this House has considered e-petition 229004 relating to the identification of pets. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary no. The ayes have it. Order, order.
The proceedings